I was at a cafe in London on a sweltering day and boldly ordered an iced tea. The barista paused, then offered me a puzzled smile and a bottled cold tea. It dawned on me that iced tea isn't the staple here that it is back home. I cheerfully explained how in the US we improve tea by serving it over ice, sweet, cold, and perfect for summer. A British customer in line overheard and chuckled, "So you took our tea and just put ice in it?" I felt a bit silly, but I doubled down, insisting it's refreshing and popular, at least in my experience. We all shared a friendly laugh. In that moment, I realized I had basically been bragging about adding ice to tea, as if it were a groundbreaking innovation. Who knew a few ice cubes could be so amusing? It definitely gave me a new perspective on how an ordinary thing back home could be a novelty elsewhere.
I was editing a report with my American colleague when we stumbled on the word colour. He promptly deleted the U, insisting that it spelled colour. I raised an eyebrow and teased him for butchering the Queen's English. He just laughed and said they weren't butchering anything, just streamlining the spelling. Language evolves, he shrugged, as if dropping a letter was the natural next step. In his view, Americans improved English by trimming unnecessary letters. At least that's what he claimed with a grin. Meanwhile, I half-jokingly lamented the demise of proper spelling. We ended up compromising by letting the computer's spell check decide the format based on region. It was a friendly exchange that highlighted how even our shared language isn't quite so shared. I left that meeting smiling, amused that we managed to turn a single letter into a good-natured culture clash. Who knew one little vowel could spark such debate?
My first time driving in the UK was a comedy of errors. Not only was I on the opposite side of the road, that I also had to conquer a manual transmission. I stalled the car twice within 5 minutes. Frustrated, I muttered about how back in the States, almost everyone drives automatics. I even joked to my British friend that we Americans improved driving by freeing up our right hand. I mean, why bother with stick shifts when you can cruise one-handed, right? He found that hilarious. To be fair, having an automatic and plenty of cup holders does make life easier, at least in my opinion. As we lurched through traffic, I was both embarrassed and a little defensive. It's funny how I went from feeling like a competent driver to feeling like a newbie, all because I didn't have my American-style upgrades. It definitely gave me new respect for manual drivers in the UK. I met up with an American friend who excitedly handed me a Hershey bar to try, calling it a classic taste of home. I took a bite and must have made a face without realizing because he immediately asked what I thought. In truth, the tangy aftertaste caught me off guard. I'm used to our creamier Cadbury chocolate. Not wanting to offend, I said it was interesting. He then proudly launched into how Americans even improved chocolate by inventing peanut butter cups and countless candy varieties, at least in his mind. I couldn't help but grin at his enthusiasm. To him, Hershey's is nostalgia and comfort. I get that. I gently mentioned our British Cadbury is a bit different, but we left it at that. Walking away, I chuckled to myself. He was so confident that American sweets were the pinnacle, and I found it enduring that we could good-naturedly disagree over something as simple as chocolate. During my first week living in England, I kept flicking the wrong switch in the car. Every time I tried to signal a turn, I'd accidentally turn on the windshield wipers. My British co-workers found it hilarious. One morning I quipped, "I swear, back in the US, I'm a great driver. We just drive on the right side, you know." They groaned at my corny joke. Truthfully, I was just covering for how clumsy I felt adapting to opposite-side driving. They teased me that British roads predate American ones by centuries, so maybe I was the odd one. I laughed along, but part of me stubbornly thought, our way makes more sense. At least it did in that moment. It's humbling to suddenly be the clueless foreign driver. By the end of that week, I gained a whole new respect for anyone switching driving sides. It's not as easy as it looks.
Staying with my American friend, I noticed something was missing in his kitchen, an electric kettle. One evening I fancied a cup of tea, and he promptly filled a mug with water and put it in the microwave. I was floored. I'd never seen someone boil water without a kettle before. He saw my astonishment and chuckled, explaining that in the US, many people just microwave water or use coffee makers for tea. He genuinely thought it was a nifty time saver. I teased him, saying that this British girl was not convinced. He grinned and offered me the resulting hot water, which I politely used, trying not to cringe. I realised he wasn't trying to offend tradition. He honestly believed his method was just as good, maybe even an improvement on our tea kettle routine. It was a gentle reminder that what I see as essential, he sees as optional. Neither of us budged, but we had a good laugh about it.
I was travelling through a small town in England and desperately needed my morning caffeine. I walked into a cosy cafe and asked for a large drip coffee with cream. The barista gave me a blank look. Drip coffee isn't really a thing there, apparently. She offered an Americano instead, which I accepted, but then I asked if refills were free. Old habits die hard. She laughed and said, "Sorry, we don't really do free refills here." I realised I must have sounded like such an American. Back home, I'm used to bottomless diner coffee that's more quantity than quality. I sheepishly took my single cup and sat down. It struck me how we Americans turn coffee into a constant companion, always on the go, always topped up. I'd always thought that was an improvement on tiny cups of tea, but here I was, actually enjoying sipping one measured cup of coffee. Go figure.
One afternoon, I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in front of my British roommate. He watched with a mix of curiosity and horror as I slathered peanut butter on bread and added a layer of grape jelly. Finally, he laughed and asked, "Do you actually eat that combination?" I was surprised. PB&J, the classic where I'm from, the taste of childhood lunches. I offered him a bite, confident he'd love it. He took the smallest nibble and shrugged, clearly not converted. I launched into a playful spiel about how Americans revolutionized the simple sandwich by perfecting the sweet and salty combo, at least in our eyes. He wasn't convinced, but he admitted it wasn't as terrible as he'd imagined. We ended up chatting about all the comfort foods we grew up with. I realized I had been genuinely expecting him to be impressed. It's funny how I assumed our American twist on a sandwich was a universal crowd pleaser.
I was in the car with my American friend in London when we stopped at a red light. He started to inch forward to turn left and I yelped, "What are you doing? It's a red!" He hit the brakes, confused, and responded, "Back home you can turn right on red if it's clear. I thought left on red might be okay here." I couldn't help but laugh as I explained that no, that's definitely not allowed in the UK. He was genuinely surprised. In his mind, that little American rule is a brilliant way to keep traffic moving. Why sit idle when you could go? I saw his point, it does work well in the States, but it gave me a chuckle to see him try to import that logic here. He sheepishly apologized and waited for green. It was a harmless mistake, and we both learned something new about each other's road rules that day.
I hosted a backyard barbecue for my British neighbours, determined to give them the full American experience. They arrived expecting a casual cookout with a few burgers. Instead, I had a smoker going with racks of ribs, pulled pork slow cooking, burgers, hot dogs, a mountain of sides, the works. One Brit joked, "Blimey, this is a feast." I grinned, proud as ever. I explained how where I'm from, we take barbecue seriously and kind of supersized the concept. At least in my experience, more is more when it comes to grilling. They were astonished, but dug in happily. As we ate, I realized I was basically showing off my culture's approach to a simple barbecue. Go big or go home. They teased me later that I'd ruined them for their modest UK barbecues. I laughed, secretly pleased. It felt good to share how we do things, and honestly, I did think our way was pretty awesome.
While visiting a British friend's flat, I offered to put the takeaway leftovers in the fridge. I opened the fridge door and was stunned by how little it was, half the size of the behemoth I have at home. I struggled to rearrange items to fit the takeout box. Jokingly, I told my friend, "Our fridges in America are like double this size. We pretty much have a whole pantry on ice." He rolled his eyes and said British kitchens are smaller, so they shop more often. I nodded, but inside I was thinking how spoiled I am by my massive fridge with its ice maker and endless shelves. I actually found myself bragging that we can do a big weekly shop and store it all easily, as if that's some great achievement. He just laughed at my mild fridge superiority complex. It's funny, I never even considered fridge size until that moment of culture shock.
I went out to dinner in London with my American friend, and when the bill came, I watched him tip nearly 20%. The service charge was already included, so I was a bit surprised. The waiter looked pleasantly confused as well. After we left, I asked my friend why he tipped extra. He seemed equally puzzled by my question and said, "That was great service. I wanted to say thanks. Besides, in the US you'd tip at least that much." I realized he wasn't showing off. He genuinely felt obligated to reward good service, as if it wouldn't be right not to. I teased him that if he keeps that up here, he'll spoil British waitstaff for the rest of us. He laughed, but I could tell he took pride in being generous. It was sweet, really. To me, it highlighted how deeply ingrained the American tipping culture is. He thought he was just doing the proper thing, even in a country where it wasn't expected.
I visited Florida in the summer and remember stepping into a mall that felt like a freezer. As a Brit used to milder summers, I literally shivered. My American friend was unbothered, strolling around in shorts like it was perfectly normal. I finally asked, "Isn't it a bit too cold?" He laughed and said, "Nah, AC is life. We like to keep things cool. It's an improvement on sweating, right?" I had to wrap my arms to keep warm. At least in my experience, Brits would just crack open a window or use a fan unless it's truly boiling. But here I was, teeth almost chattering on a 95 degrees Fahrenheit day indoors. Don't get me wrong, the relief from the heat was nice at first, but they really crank it up, or down, I suppose. My friend was so proud of the powerful air conditioning, and I didn't have the heart to tell him I'd be sneaking outside to warm up every now and then. Shopping in the UK for the first time, I noticed something felt off in the stores. Eventually I realised the shop assistants weren't approaching me to ask if I needed help, and they weren't smiling non-stop. At first I took it personally. In the US, I'm used to enthusiastic greetings and constant offers of assistance, even if they're a bit much. I mentioned this difference to a British colleague who chuckled. He said, "Here, we figure you'll ask if you need something, no forced cheeriness." I found myself defending the American way, saying how a friendly staff makes shopping feel welcoming. He shrugged and replied that he prefers being left in peace. That gave me pause. I had always thought our customer service ethos was a huge improvement to the shopping experience. Who doesn't like a smile and a "have a nice day"? But I saw his point. Maybe sometimes a more low-key approach isn't worse, just different.
When I moved from the UK to the US for a job, I rented a small house and was thrilled to see a huge washer and dryer in the laundry room. I remember telling my American neighbour how excited I was to have a dryer. Back home, I mostly air-dried my clothes on a rack or outside when the weather behaved. She looked at me blankly for a second and then said, "Oh right, you guys hang clothes. We pretty much throw everything in the dryer here." She said it so casually, as if the idea of waiting for clothes to air dry was from the Dark Ages. Honestly, I was impressed by the convenience too. In that moment, I realized I had internalized a tiny bit of an American mindset. Why wait if a machine can do it faster? I still love the fresh smell of line-dried sheets, but I've definitely embraced the efficiency of my American dryer. Old habits meet new world.
Back in high school, I did an exchange program in England. On my first day, I was handed a blazer and tie, a school uniform. I'd only seen those in movies. Coming from a US public school where I could wear hoodies and jeans, this was a shock.
I remember griping to my British classmates that in America we have the freedom to dress how we like at school. One girl smirked and said, "Looky you, we don't have to agonize over outfits every morning." That made me stop and think. I'd always assumed not having uniforms was better, more personal expression, at least in my view. But they saw our system as chaotic and stressful. Wearing the same thing every day, they didn't mind at all. By the end of my semester, I'd gotten used to the uniform. I even kind of liked not worrying about clothes. It was a lesson that my idea of improvement wasn't the only one out there.
On my first morning visiting an American friend's home, I went to plug in my phone charger in the bathroom and, to my shock, found a regular outlet by the sink. As a Brit, I'm used to strict rules about no ordinary power sockets in bathrooms for safety. I actually hesitated, picturing some cartoonish electrocution scenario. My friend noticed and assured me it's fine. They have special outlets, GFIs, he called them, to prevent accidents. He said it like it was no big deal, but to me it was wild. I joked, "Leave it to Americans to find a way to blow dry your hair in the bathroom." He laughed and admitted he never thought about it. Of course there's a plug for the hairdryer. Why wouldn't there be? I realised he genuinely saw it as a convenience improvement, something I'd always been taught was off limits. It's funny how each of us assumed our way was just common sense.
Over dinner one evening, I was telling my British cousin about my university days in the States. The dorm life, huge campus libraries, fraternity parties, Saturday football games with thousands of fans. I was nostalgically painting the picture of the full American college experience. He listened politely, then said his university experience in the UK was basically just going to class and heading home, no frills. I blurted out, "Mate, you missed out! College is supposed to be an experience, not just an education." He raised an eyebrow and mentioned he also missed out on massive tuition debt by living at home. Touché. I laughed, realizing I had been romanticizing my college years, as if our way was the gold standard. In my mind, we had perfected university life by turning it into a whole world of its own, at least for us. But his point was made. Maybe the way Americans do college is fun, but it's not the only way to learn and grow.
I convinced my American friend to watch the original British version of The Office with me. I was eager to see his reaction to our dry humour. Throughout the episode, I'd chuckle at the awkward silences and subtle jokes, while he sat there with a perplexed look. Finally, he said, "It's okay, but the American Office is way funnier. At least stuff actually happens." I couldn't help but laugh. He totally missed the charm of the cringe-worthy bits. He went on to explain how the US version took the concept and made it more upbeat and lovable, with clear character growth and a feel-good ending. In his view, they improved on the formula. I teased him that he just didn't get British humour. He teased back that at least he didn't feel uncomfortable watching the American one. We had to agree to disagree on which was better. It was a prime example of how we each think our version is the right one.
Staying at a quaint B&B in the English countryside, I encountered the infamous separate hot and cold taps in the sink. One tap was scalding, the other icy. The first morning, I attempted to wash my face and ended up yelping from alternating hot and cold splashes. Later, over breakfast, I told the innkeeper, half-jokingly, that Americans fixed this problem by using single mixer faucets. So you don't need to play Goldilocks with two taps. He chuckled and said many modern UK homes have mixers too, but in old buildings like this, tradition held on. I felt a bit sheepish for coming off as the know-it-all Yank trying to improve their sink. He wasn't offended, luckily. In fact, we bonded over sharing little differences like that. Still, I have to say, I silently thanked the universe for the invention of the mixer tap. Old-fashioned charm is nice, but I really do prefer not getting my hands boiled and frozen in turns.
Visiting an American friend, I encountered my first US-style toilet and got a surprise. The water level in the bowl was so high I was momentarily concerned it might splash out. I later mentioned my bewilderment to my friend and he laughed. He said American toilets have more water and powerful siphon action, better at preventing clogs and other marks, he claimed with a wink. I admit it did seem to whoosh everything away quite effectively. In my experience, UK loos use less water per flush. Still, it was such a strange design difference to me. I joked that I felt like the toilet was going to overflow, and he teased that British toilets must be wimpy in comparison. We had a good chuckle about it. It's odd the things you never think about until you travel. Who would imagine a toilet could give a tiny culture shock? It definitely made me realize even basic fixtures can vary a lot between countries.
In my office, we had an American intern who once emailed that a project was due on 0307. I prepared everything by July 3rd, only to find out he meant March 7th. We had a good laugh over the mix-up. I told him, "You gave me a heart attack. I thought I was 4 months late." He was genuinely apologetic and equally amused, explaining that in the US it's always month, day, year. I shook my head and joked, "Leave it to Americans to put the month first. Gotta be different, eh?" He grinned and said he actually found our day, month, year logic confusing at first. Fair enough. It amazed me that the same date could be read two completely different ways. Neither of us was wrong, but it did make me double-check dates from then on. It became an office running joke that we'd clarify Brit format or American format whenever we saw a date with a day 12 or less. Lesson learned without any real harm done.
I went hiking in the Lake District with some British friends who informed me the trail was about 5 kilometers and the temperature was 20 degrees Celsius. I'm an American, so I had to secretly do mental math. Okay, that's roughly 3 miles and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I confessed that I was still converting in my head, and they ribbed me mercilessly, in good fun, of course. I joked, "Hey, we improved on the metric system by making it, well, not metric." They laughed at my cheeky remark. Truthfully, I've always just used miles, feet, Fahrenheit. It's what I know, and I've caught myself insisting it makes sense. At least to me it does. One friend playfully shook his head and said, "You Yanks and your units." By the end of the hike, we'd exchanged a dozen jabs about whose system was superior. It was all in jest, but it reminded me how something as simple as measurements can be a point of pride, even when I'm outnumbered on the trail. I took my American friend to a pub and watched him struggle with the handful of coins and oddly sized notes he got his change. He whispered, "Which one is a 20p again? And these bills are all different colours and sizes." I couldn't help but smile. I explained our coin denominations and that our banknotes are designed that way to be easily distinguishable. Brilliant, if you ask me. He joked that in the US, everything's one colour because a dollar is a dollar, and he'd never had an issue. He genuinely thought his monochrome same-size dollars were just fine, an improvement in simplicity perhaps. I teased him that maybe Americans just like things green and uniform. We had a laugh as I showed him how to spot each coin. It was endearing to see him navigate something I take for granted. In that moment, I realized how we all assume our money system is intuitive until we're holding someone else's change.
Over pints at a pub, I casually mentioned to my British co-workers that I only had 2 weeks of vacation a year at my last job in the States. Their jaws practically dropped. One of them blurted, "You mean 10 days? That's barbaric." I was taken aback by their reaction. I defended it, saying that in America we're used to it. It's a work-hard culture, and at least in my experience, we consider it normal. I even caught myself framing it as a point of pride, like we're tougher for grinding through with minimal holidays. They were sympathetic, but clearly thought we were a bit mad. One colleague said she gets 5 to 6 weeks here and actually takes them. I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. And that conversation really stuck with me. I realized that I'd been justifying something that, to outsiders, sounded completely unbalanced. It was a light bulb moment. Maybe we Americans haven't exactly improved work ethic. We've just normalized being workaholics.
I invited my American co-worker to a local rugby match while he was visiting the UK.
Early in the game, he was wide-eyed, seeing players with no helmets or pads smashing into each other. He leaned over and said, "You know, we kind of took this sport and made it better. American football has padding, forward passes, more strategy." I just smiled and said, "You mean more commercials and timeouts?" He chuckled. It was all friendly banter. I could tell he truly believed the NFL is a superior evolution of rough-and-tumble rugby. I joked that our guys might be tougher for doing it with less gear, and he gave a playful scoff. We spent the rest of the match exchanging light jabs about which sport was crazier. In the end, he admitted rugby was pretty exciting, even without the bells and whistles. We left the stadium with a mutual respect and a clearer understanding of how each of us views our beloved sport as the pinnacle.
When my British friend visited me in New York, we wrapped up a night out, and I suggested grabbing pancakes at a 24-hour diner. It was 2 a.m. He looked at me in disbelief and asked, "Wait, you have restaurants that never close?" I laughed and said, "Welcome to America. If you want breakfast at 2 in the morning, you got it." Sure enough, we sat down to eggs and pancakes in the wee hours. He was equal parts delighted and stunned. I found myself bragging a bit. I told him how we Americans love convenience and options, anytime, anywhere. At least from my perspective, having things open late is a point of pride, like we've mastered availability. He admitted it was nice, but wondered aloud when the staff ever sleep. Fair point. As we left, happily full, I realized I'd been touting our 24/7 lifestyle as an upgrade to his more limited hours. Maybe neither is inherently better, but I sure did enjoy playing late-night tour guide.
I was playing catch with a British buddy in the park, explaining the rules of baseball to him, when he smirked and said, "So it's basically rounders, yeah? Rounders? A children's game?" I felt my face flush with patriotic offence, half kidding, half serious. I launched into a spirited defense of baseball, the deep strategy, the stats, the history, the World Series atmosphere. I might have gotten a bit carried away. He listened with a grin and conceded, all right, I believe you. It's more than rounders." I realized I had been practically trying to convert him. To me, baseball is a cherished institution, and I guess I needed him to see it as more than just a tweaked British game. It's funny, I caught myself acting like baseball was a personal accomplishment. We ended up laughing about it. He promised to watch a full game with me sometime, and I promised not to say "I told you so" if he loved it, though I couldn't make any guarantees. During my first week staying with family friends in the US, I woke up to see a big yellow school bus stopping on their street. Kids were climbing on, and traffic had halted in both directions as little stop signs flipped out from the bus. I was fascinated. It felt like I was in a movie. Later, I mentioned it to my American host mum, saying how in the UK, most of us just walk or take public transport to school. She was proud as punch, describing the extensive school bus system, emphasizing how it keeps kids safe and organized. I nodded. It did seem efficient, if a bit over the top compared to what I knew. I joked that Americans improved the school run by turning it into a military operation with those strict rules and iconic buses. She laughed, taking it as a compliment. Honestly, I was impressed. It's one of those things I didn't realize was unique until I saw it with my own eyes.
While touring Buckingham Palace, I jokingly told my British friend, "You know, we Americans solved the whole monarchy issue. We went and invented presidents instead." He gave me a mock glare and then burst out laughing. I was obviously teasing, with a hint of American pride maybe. He quipped back that we were simply impatient and missed out on centuries of royal drama and pageantry. I waved it off with a grin, but it did make me reflect. Growing up in the US, I'd always heard how great it was we improved governance by ditching kings and queens for elections and term limits. I kind of carried that as a bit of national pride, at least in history class I did. Standing there among all the royal pomp, I realised it's not so black and white. My friend and I ended up agreeing that our systems are just different stories. I still silently appreciated our American approach, but hey, I'll admit the British do ceremonies pretty spectacularly. When I visited an American family for breakfast, they served up bacon and eggs. I bit into the bacon and it practically crunched like a potato chip. Startled, I asked, "Is it always this crispy?"
They looked concerned, thinking I didn't like it, but I quickly clarified that British bacon is usually thicker and not as crunchy. The dad chuckled and said, "Ah, you've been deprived. We like our bacon nice and crispy. It's the only way." He honestly believed that too. In his eyes, frying bacon to a crisp was an upgrade, the perfect way to cook it. I smiled and admitted the salty crunch was growing on me. I joked that Americans managed to turn bacon into a snack food. We all laughed over that. By the end of my trip, I had to confess I found myself missing that shatteringly crispy bacon with my breakfast. Maybe they converted me a little, though I still enjoy our chewier British rashers when I'm back home.
My British buddy arrived in the US just in time for the 4th of July, and I took him to a neighborhood parade. I'll never forget his face as he saw front lawns, cars, and even dogs decked out in American flags. "You lot really love your flag, don't you?" he said, half amazed, half amused. I laughed, realizing how over the top it must seem. I responded, "Yup, we're proud of the Stars and Stripes. Can't celebrate without it." I'd always found it normal that we plaster the flag everywhere on holidays, and often on random Tuesdays, to be honest. In my mind, it's a display of patriotism. At least that's how I feel when I put out my flag. He nodded and mentioned that in Britain you'd rarely see the Union Jack outside of official buildings or football matches. That surprised me a bit. The whole experience made me see our flag frenzy through his eyes, both endearing and a tad excessive. But hey, it's part of the American charm, I suppose.
While touring a medieval castle in Wales, I found myself huffing up a narrow spiral staircase. Jokingly, I said to the tour guide, "Ever thought of installing an elevator in here?" The look he gave me was priceless, a mix of amusement and horror. My British friend elbowed me, whispering, "You did not just suggest that." I sheepishly grinned. Truth is, I was only half joking. Part of me thought it'd be great to easily reach the top of the tower without getting winded. In my American mindset, there's a reflex to modernize and improve for comfort's sake. At least in my experience, we like our conveniences. The guide kindly replied, "We prefer the castle as is, stairs and all, to preserve the history." Fair enough. I instantly felt like the uncultured tourist asking to put a Starbucks in the Colosseum or something. We all had a laugh about it later, but I won't be making that suggestion again anytime soon.
During university, I had an American roommate who had the straightest, whitest teeth I'd ever seen. Eventually, I had to ask her about it, and she laughed, saying her mum got her braces by age 12 and whitening strips every year. It was so normal for her that she was surprised I'd even comment. I joked, "Americans and their Hollywood smiles, eh?" She admitted Americans do take pride in perfect teeth. It's practically a cultural expectation. I realized she kind of assumed it was an improvement on nature. Like, why wouldn't everyone want a flawless smile if they could get it? Meanwhile, I had the typical British, slightly crooked bottom teeth and had never cared. Neither did anyone back home. We teased each other. I called her toothpaste commercial ready. She teased me about Brits and our teeth stereotypes. All in good fun. It struck me how something I found unnecessary was so routine for her. In the end, I must say her smile was contagious. Maybe there's something to that American dental zeal. Watching TV at my British friend's house, I was amazed that an hour-long show on BBC just ran straight through. No commercial breaks at all. I kept waiting for ads that never came. Finally, I asked, "So, you guys don't have to sit through adverts every 10 minutes?" He grinned, "Not on the Beeb, mate. That's what the license fee's for." I was honestly impressed, but I also found myself defending our way. I said something like, "Well, in the US, the ads pay for the shows, so we don't have to pay a fee." He gave me a look and laughed that I'd actually grown fond of commercials. I realized I had internalized the convenience of free TV funded by ads, as if it was some clever trade-off we'd perfected. Truth be told, not having any interruptions was pretty wonderful. It's funny, I never thought I'd feel nostalgic for commercials, but part of me did, simply because it's what I'm used to. Old habits die hard, I guess.
At a pub in England, I almost reflexively pulled out my ID, even though I was 20 at the time.
The bartender chuckled and said, "You're fine, love. It's 18 here." That sparked a conversation with my British friends about America's drinking age being 21. I found myself explaining it like it was the most sensible thing, talking about reducing teen DUIs and all that. They weren't buying it. One friend pointed out, you can vote, join the army, even buy a gun at 18 in the US, but not have a pint? I opened my mouth to retort, and then realized I didn't have a great answer. "I guess we think it keeps younger people safer," I offered, even though I knew some college kids just binge when they finally turn 21. In that moment, I recognized I was parroting what I'd always been told, treating our law as superior by default. We all ended up laughing at the absurdities in each other's countries. I left the pub thinking maybe 21 isn't a magical number after all. I took my American friend to a traditional pub and he ordered a pint of bitter. When it arrived at cellar temperature, cool but not ice cold, he looked perplexed. He asked the barman for a colder one, even gesturing like he wanted frost on the glass. The barman, with typical dry wit, said, "If it's too cold, you can't taste it, mate." I stifled a laugh as my friend realised he was being gently roasted. Later, over our drinks, he admitted he was used to American beers served super cold. He thought it was an improvement. Beer's more refreshing that way, he insisted. I teased that maybe some American beer needs numbing cold to be palatable. He rolled his eyes with a smile. Truthfully, I understood his preference. A chilled lager can hit the spot. But I loved that little pub moment because it showed how he assumed our way, serving beer at proper cellar temperature, was wrong until he thought about why. In the end, he finished the pint and even conceded it tasted pretty good as is.
Riding the elevator at work with a British colleague, I mentioned I needed to fetch something from my apartment before a meeting. She gave me a playful smile and said, "You mean your flat, in the lift?" I laughed, realizing she was poking fun at my American word choices. I defended myself jokingly. Elevator actually makes sense. It elevates you. And apartment sounds fancier than flat, doesn't it? She rolled her eyes theatrically. We went back and forth comparing jumper versus sweater, chips versus fries, lorry versus truck. It was all in good humor. Honestly, I caught myself feeling oddly proud of my versions, as if the American terms were upgrades somehow. She was equally proud of the British ones. Who's to say which is better? In the end, we were just two people separated by a common language, ribbing each other. We stepped out of the elevator, lift, chuckling, having bonded over the silliest differences in vocabulary. Same language, different flavors, and a lot of laughs.
I visited a friend in Texas, and he picked me up in his Ford F-150 pickup. The thing was colossal. I practically had to climb into the cab. Driving around, I felt like we were in a monster truck compared to the cars back home. I admitted my little hatchback in England would look like a toy next to this. He was pleased, saying bigger is safer and more comfortable. We improved on those tiny cars you have over there. I chuckled, not sure our petrol prices would agree. But I have to say, cruising on wide American highways in that beast of a truck was a unique thrill. He pointed out every feature. Cup holders everywhere, massive engine, high seating position, like it was the pinnacle of automotive evolution. In his mind, it really was. I just smiled and enjoyed the ride. It was one of those moments I realized how differently we view cars. His pride in that giant truck was genuine, and I found it oddly charming, even if I still prefer something that fits on English roads.
I used to complain that British roundabouts were confusing and that back in the US we had a superior system with four-way stop signs and traffic lights. That was until I lived in a UK town with roundabouts everywhere. At first I came to a full stop at each one, irritating the drivers behind me. Gradually I learned to navigate them properly, yield and glide through. To my astonishment, traffic flowed smoother than I expected. No endless stopping and starting. I found myself begrudgingly impressed. One day, I admitted to my British friend, "Okay, roundabouts aren't so bad. They actually work." He gave me a sly smile and said, "Told you so." It was humbling. I realized I'd shown up assuming our American way was automatically better.
only to discover this British invention was pretty clever. It's a small thing, but it reminded me to keep an open mind. Sometimes the improvement we think we have, well, maybe it was there all along, quietly waiting for us to notice.